This is Willpower.
Well, here we are on the Willpower podcast with Steve Revelli, the Chief Science Officer for Silver Biotics and a self-proclaimed adrenaline junkie. So I'm stoked to be here with you.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah. So I want to speak to the audience a little bit about the mastery that you bring to Silver Biotics, which is a tried and true for me. One of the brands that we're here because I have a super love for all of the products, which started with the toothpaste, which is why I was asking y'all about, is the toothpaste the gateway drug to all of the other product line extensions. But let's talk a little bit just about how you got your start, because you bring the smarts to the table when it comes to science and formulation. And I want to hear about your background and all of that.
Well, I'm a science junkie, a nerd, if you want to call that. I'm actually a retired educator. I taught public schools, and I still teach some college classes in organic chemistry, which everybody loves to hate if you're, in college.
Yeah.
And so I've actually taught every science there is to teach. You name it, I've taught it. So like I said, I'm kind of a science nerd. And it was 20 years ago, I moved into a neighborhood, and my neighbor had this company they just started. Actually, it was a mining company, and it turned down in the mining company, so they had to come up with something else. And they were kind of given this gift of producing nano silver products. And so him knowing my science background, he was always after me to retire early. And I did. I retired a little early, got my 30 years in, and went to work for the Molars, which is American Biotech Labs, and their brand is Silver Biotics.
Yeah, amazing. I love that you say you work in every science possible. And I thought to myself quickly, what was the last science I took? I was explaining to one of your colleagues this morning that I'm very self-taught when it comes to physiology and I dare I say like biochemistry. But for you to be able to teach all that, I think the last science I took was like theories of light and sound, which is like nice. Rocks for jocks. It's like the one you take when you're like, I really need to pass this science. As I was a theater major, right? So they don't put a lot of science on you in that department. So pretty beautiful breadth of experience you bring and so much knowledge. And I think there's a crossover for anyone who's listening. We're going to talk a little science, and that'll be a game-changing way for you to understand more. And I want to start with some of the sort of the foundations of what we're talking about today, which is this Silver Soul technology, which is incredible, having its roots in colloidal silver in some way. We can talk about the differential there, but really sort of opening the conversation with is like, what are the things that we might need to know to understand as we begin to develop the conversation today around silver, like just from an antimicrobial and even what that word and term means from that standpoint, and at a molecular level, what might be happening in the body when we are, our immune system is being utilized, or we are working to fight pathogens or antigens in the body. Can you talk? Can you give us some insight? This is exciting. I feel like I'm getting a little university here. A little bit more education on that.
Yeah, sure. The particle we make is a small particle, and if you look at the word colloid for an example, something that's colloidal, it's a definition, and a definition of a colloid is a microscopic or ultra microscopic particle that's suspended in something, in a solvent. In this case, usually it's water. And so to be a true colloid, the particles have to be a certain size. And the size definition is between 5 and 200 nanometers. Now, everybody gets a little kind of spooky when you talk about nano. Nano just means small. It doesn't mean bad. And so a true colloid is a particle in that size range. The particle that we have in our Silver Soul technology is between 5 and 15 nanometers. So it is on the lower end of that. And that's a true colloid. Unfortunately, there are a lot of other products out there that tout that they're colloids, but they're really not. Most of them are what we call ionic, and which are very, very small particles. Ions are just single atoms. Ours are a collection of pure silver atoms in a particle. And the key for our particle is that it has a special coating on it. And it is a silver oxide coating. We call it tetraoxide tetrasilver. with that in mind, that coating on top of the pure silver particle makes our particle very antimicrobial. Otherwise, it kills small things. It kills microbes, including yeast and fungus and, of course, bacteria.
Mm. And so this nanoparticle size, smaller, does that have anything to do with like better absorption or being able to pass through specific membranes in the body that larger particles might not be able to get through? Because you hear a lot about like it's nanotechnology or nanoparticles, but nano to me, it sort of sounds like it's just saying, well, it's of a certain size, but it's not even telling you what size that is.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And our particle loves to go through what we call mucous membranes. And so in the oral cavity, the esophagus, that's where our particle really goes into the body. And it does go into the body in the stomach and small intestine as well, but it really likes to go in through those mucous membranes. And so when we say, take a teaspoon a day, leave that teaspoon in your mouth for as long as possible and swallow it slowly, forget the best absorption rate. But the absorption rate of our particle is just that right size that it takes into the body very readily.
Yeah, that's awesome. So that it strings me up too. And because the immune supplement, which is like a liquid supplement that sort of looks like it's in a mouthwash bottle or something like that, when I first was using it, it's like this interesting pattern of like putting something in your mouth and swishing it around and then going to spit it out. And the first couple of times being like, oh, wait a minute, it's all the good stuff's going down the sink, So like it's just shifting the mindset and the pattern of actually like knowing that the product is clean enough and beneficial enough that you're swishing it around to get it into the tissues of the mouth. And I don't know if this is also true. This is an interesting question that comes up, but just the tissues of the mouth and swallowing into the body to be able to have the body get the benefit. But I'm wondering also like in the mouth, just as a breath worker, I think about, is there some of that technology that's staying in the mouth or getting into the sinus cavity in any way that's like then benefiting us as we breathe? Is there any of that going on?
Well, I'm sure.
Because you're getting some of that into your system, right?
Yeah, as soon as you put something in your mouth, it all just doesn't magically disappear.
Right,
it stays in there for a while.
Yeah.
Like when you're brushing your teeth, you get that peppermint taste and it stays there for a long time because the peppermint is still there. And the same way with the silver.
Yeah. The toothpaste is the gateway drug for me, for sure. And then the formulations, the entire product extension has this Silver Soul technology. And we're coming off of these years of, I like to feel like it's in the past now, but we're coming off these years of quarantine and the shift in the mindset of people around their health and the landscape. And I just want to sort of break down a bit of this, just the microbial properties, or there's a lot of fodder and conversation around the immune system, right? Over the last few years and like how we take care of it and how we bolster it. And, what about the silver technology, or even just, why even in the history of colloidal silver, which you're explaining is a sort of a slightly different component and size, why would we be using silver? And this historically, how is silver used to be able to sort of, was it bolstering the immune system, or was it more about like fighting off something when someone already had issues? They had fungus and it was like, get your silver on, or, where did that start before you even developed this, the modern technology that you have developed?
Oh, heavens. Millennia ago. Yeah. Literally hundreds of years ago, if not thousands. Back in the day, recorded history, especially back in England, you had two basically castes of society. You had the royals and you had the peasants. And there was a saying back in those days that, hey, that boy was born with a silver spoon in his mouth. Mm-hmm. Well, because all the royals had silver utensils. And so from that, they got silver into their system every day. Mm-hmm. And they were more healthy than the peasants who had the wooden utensils. Wow. And so it's been used for a long time. The pioneers had silver coins in their water barrels to keep their water fresh. So the silver's been around a long time and has been a proven antimicrobial for hundreds, if not thousands of years.
It sounds like even before we could fully research it, people just knew it was like working somehow. And so they utilized it. Yeah, it's so fantastic. The shift though into sort of the modern world and the research, it's like we say it's been around for eons, and then what happens that it disappears? It doesn't disappear completely, but why is this just not standard practice for us? I think there's like two tangents in there that are around society having some conversation around, I remember when I was young and people were using silver, and it sort of was like there were, there's like wives' tales, like it can poison you or it can turn you blue, or like nobody knows what the right dose is, or is it just like, is it a homeopathic fallacy? And so there was like, I was very young, but just like 20 years or, just of this like conversation and people dispelling the value of it. Do you feel like you saw that happening as well?
Well, something magical came along.
Yeah.
Antibiotics.
Oh, there you go.
And that was the new magic. And so antibiotics was the new thing. It killed bacteria, infections, and sepsis, and on and on and on.
Yeah.
And so along with that, silver was kind of left by the wayside. And then we had some regulatory bodies that decided that silver was a heavy metal. And of course, we know that there are really nasty heavy metals, cadmium and lead and mercury and all those really nasty ones. Well, silver was kind of dumped into that same category, but it's not a heavy metal. It's just like copper. It's like, gold. It's, people consume gold all the time, and they have copper wristbands and rings. But silver, for some reason, which, there's conspiracy theories out there, that silver was lumped in there as well by a regulatory body.
As like a no-no, as like maybe this isn't a good idea to ingest, or we don't want this in our food items or anything we would be putting in the body. The
nice thing about silver is this has been scientifically proven that silver has no function in the human body. It's not in any metabolic pathway. It doesn't really, the body just kind of ignores it. The only use that silver has in the body is to be antimicrobial. And talk about the immune system and the immune support. We have bacteria in our bodies. We have yeast, we have fungus, we have all these microbes in our bodies. Some of them are probiotics, which are good, and some of them are pathogenic, which are bad. It turns out that people don't understand about bacteria, for an example. If you take a pathogenic bacteria, let's take, let's see, what's Yersinia pestis? Ooh, that's plague.
Yeah, sounds better when you say Yersinia pestis.
Yeah, that's a bad one, right?
Yeah.
It's the plague. That's pathogenic, of course. But you have something like a lactobacillus, which is good for your gut. Those bacteria are as different from each other, and the people don't understand this, as like a giraffe is to a cat.
Yeah.
Totally different things. I mean, they're both mammals, right? Giraffes and cats.
Yeah, but totally different.
Totally different mechanisms, a lot of different metabolisms. Well, bacteria are the same way. Turns out that silver doesn't affect probiotics as long as it's kept on a low concentration, but it slaughters pathogens.
Wow. So that's pretty miraculous.
It is.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just one of those miracle things that we found out that it works that way.
Yeah. And do you see, like, from either a nanoparticle size or from the dosage, let's call that, for in layman's terms, the dosage of it, that there's some brands out there that are sort of like, hitting people over the head with a hammer and the amount that's in there. And that could be actually, the notion of taking antibiotics, stripping all of the good and bad beasties out of the body, that if you were to take silver to a dosage that's not what you are doing, but that it could be problematic, or that there are companies, like, this is the issue that exists so much in supplementation today, right? It's like, is it fairy dusted or is it overdosed? It's like the issue we have with melatonin. It's such a high dose. I have women that will come to me and say, I'm on this melatonin, and check out the bottle. And I'm like, that's just 10 grams of melatonin. That's like, of course you're sleeping. You know what I mean? So just if we correlate that to the world of like silver and this technology, are there companies that we need to be careful of, not to name names, but I just mean we have to know what's in the label and know what's in the dosage of this as well?
Yes.
Yeah.
That's for sure. Our immune support. Let's go finish that little conversation about immune support. What our product does is it supports the immune system to do what it's already doing. What it does is it takes care of that bioload of pathogens that's normally in our bodies, but it's not causing disease per se, but it's the immune system's having to keep that at bay. What our silver does is it allows the immune system to be more efficient because it's taking care of that bioload that's already happening in the body. And so that's the way that it supports the immune system, is that it takes that bioload away and allows your immune system to be much more efficient.
And that's like a top-down thing, right? So people who are listening to this like, well, gut health. And I mean, it's a systemic relief or systemic helper, right? It's supporting the body's mechanisms to be able to heal itself by keeping it, I mean, out of a slight amount of stress, right? Because that's what inflammation really is in the body.
Exactly.
It's a stressor.
Yeah. And the dosage. We have done our studies, and we've done a lot of studies, hundreds of studies. And we know that if you take silver above about 50 parts per million, you will kill off the probiotics. And there are products out there that are 100. I even found one that is 10,000 parts per million.
Wow.
It looks like molasses. It looks, and I'm going, oh, I would never put that much silver in my body. No matter what kind of silver it was, I would never put that much in my body.
Yeah. Let's, can we talk about contraindications as we're talking about different dosages? So really understanding what is in the mix, what blend of the technology. Also, there's a ton of studies behind your specific molecule. Would we say molecule? Your specific technology?
Particle.
Particle. There we go.
Probably particle. Going back to structure.
Yeah.
Ionic silver. Let's, finish that discussion on that. Ionic silver
Which is like, I think layman's terms, most people would think, oh, colloidal silver, I understand what that is. And that's sort of like where it stops. So you're talking about how you mentioned earlier how that's ionic.
Right. Yeah. For an example, if you take silver nitrate, which is a common silver salt, what you do is you put it in water and it immediately dissolves into silver ions, single silver atoms that have lost an electron, and nitrate, which is pretty much harmless. However, here's the problem, is that silver ions have a hard time leaving the body. They tend to stay. And if you overdose with those silver ions, they actually collect in the adipose tissue under your skin. And then when UV light hits it, you become a photographic film, and you turn blue and you turn black. Now, there's nothing necessarily toxic about that. Silver doesn't have any real toxicity in the body, but you look blue, which is probably not a good thing.
Right. And speaks to why you want to get all this right and why you guys created something that was like an irrefutable particle that's not going to do that.
Our particle leaves the body within 24 to 72 hours. And we say that range because the testing that we did at University of Utah in the consumption test that we did, that some people it cleared out in 24 hours and some people it took 72 hours to clear out. So we say that's kind of the range, but the average is around, 36 to 48 hours. Our particles leave the body. Most of it is excreted in the large intestine, in the colon, and some in the kidneys.
And that's that difference of time, I would imagine, is really like transit time for different people's metabolism and function and all of that. Yeah. So in the landscape of all of the products that do you have a favorite?
A favorite of products?
A favorite of the product line?
Of our line?
Yeah.
Oh, heavens. I formulated the toothpaste.
I know.
It was about 5 years ago, I think I did that one. And I really like that.
Yeah.
But our skin creams are wonderful and they work with sensitive skin. A little granddaughter I have has, sensitive skin, eczema. The healing cream, unscented, really took care of it.
Yeah.
The wound care products, our wound gels, I just love those. I get an owie, you just stick it on there, throw a Band-Aid on it, and it's healed. And
I had a really beautiful experience with the wound gel, and I think I had wound gel and healing cream with me. I burned my hand really badly in two places on a stove, like it was like a gas stove, but then the metal frame of it, and I like put my hand on, you could hear it. It was just like a gnarly burn, and I didn't, I was really nervous about it. I was like, oh, this feels like this is going to be a doozy. And I just used those religiously day after day after day after day. And it was like, it really saved me. And like, you can't see scars or anything, which is pretty miraculous because it was gnarly. So yeah, I'm a big believer in that. And also, are other people using the gels and the creams and things? Like I use them for lots of different things that aren't, I don't know if they were like not intended for, but I'll be like, oh, the wound gel is really nice. If I have a little like acne breakout, I'm like dabbing it on. And So are people using them for other things? Do you sometimes use them? I mean, hopefully you're not using the toothpaste for shampoo or something, but for off-package use,
Off-label?
Off-label use, yeah.
Officially, we can say that we have heard of many, many off-label uses.
Yeah.
Some of them are unimaginable, but we've had no concerns. We've had no complaints and no adverse reactions that has ever been reported by using our products in a multitude of ways.
And that includes like ingesting the silver and utilizing the Silver Soul technology and everything in your products, using the toothpaste for women who are trying to conceive and pregnancy and kids and all of that. It's straight across, no contraindications to worry about there.
No contraindications at all.
Because there are some, I think, with silver, other forms of silver, right? There are some things like if you're on specific medications and whatnot. So that's a really good shout to people who are concerned about the crossover that happens. And I sort of knew somewhat the answer to that question because I think the pet line speaks to that too. So is that who came up with the pet line do you have dogs and cats at home or?
We had this old alley cat, just, roams around, gets in fights, comes home. And one day he came home and he had a big scab on top of his head. And I'm going, that doesn't look good. So I took a washcloth and kind of wiped it off. And I looked in there and I could see the skull.
Oh my goodness.
I could see bone. And it was really infected badly. I thought, uh-oh. So I got a tube of the gel and I thought, well, we'll see what happens. So I squirted it into the hole. And the skin puffed up. I mean, it just filled the whole area with gel. I'm going, all right, we'll see what happens. 2 weeks, he was completely healed and fine and lived for many more years after that. And I thought, okay, well, if it works on us, and there's a horse study that was done. I can't remember where you can have access to that, but there was a horse study that was done where the horse was ripped open by a barbed wire fence badly, and they were going to put the horse down. And so the owner says, well, no, I have this pet gel. Well, let's try it. And it took 2.5 months, but you could actually watch the closure of the wound. And that's how it works. That's how it works with that bioload, like I was talking about earlier. Mm-hmm. If you get a laceration, a burn, or something else like that, the epidermis is missing. It's gone. It was injured. And so what we found out with our wound bed studies is that the silver actually takes care of that bioload that interferes with the cells moving across the wound bed and closing the wound bed. But with the silver on there, those cells are uninhibited and actually move across the wound bed faster because they're not inhibited by the microbes.
And so it's sort of like the things that are there that are like scabs and particles and other pieces of it are being, is eaten the right word? It's just being absorbed by the silver. Mm-hmm. There's a show that you were speaking in too that I was listening to where you were talking about there's like some of the silvers are stronger pulls towards cleaning up these parts of the body so that the body can heal. And is that a differentiating fact as well? Like the strength of the silver or give me the science on that.
Well, it's what we call the mode of actions.
Yeah.
And the mode of action with the microbes, for an example, has like 3 modes of action. One is that it loves electrons. Silver, in the way that we make our particles, love electrons. And so when it bumps up against like a pathogen, it will actually start ripping the electrons away from the fabric that makes the covering of that microbe. And so it just basically makes holes in it and the microbe just kind of spills out.
Yeah.
Or the microbes actually, we found out that actually will take in the silver particles. And once the silver gets into the microbe, it interferes with, number one, protein metabolism. So they can't make energy and they basically become dormant and die, or it becomes part of the replication process. And it causes that replication process to stagnate and they can't replicate anymore. And they only have a lifespan anyway of hours.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a big win. Here's the research I was reading lately, and I was mentioning to you this before we started, all about, look, I know and love the toothpaste. Like, you're a big hero in my life, and I'm sure you get that from other people, and it seems like, but it's just a toothpaste, but I was diving in because I wanted to really talk about why I like it so much and how it's whole body healthy and clean, and that's so important to me and with my family and the house and everything. And the studies were astonishing when I started to pull literature on what is in the standard toothpaste and mouthwashes and, just things we have in our cabinets. And then things, I don't have children myself, but I was like, parents are giving these like flavored, popular brand toothpaste to their kids twice a day, every day, and making it like trying to make it a fun part of the hygienic process. And I just would love for you to speak a little bit to things like SLS and stuff that's in other toothpastes that quite frankly are not healthy for us. Just to speak to that, because it's amazing to me that when I go to the dentist, they give me a little bag at the end and it's like, okay, you're a fancy dentist in Austin. Why are you giving me this tube of a very popular brand that I know, especially now, what's in it, right? It's like continuing to proliferate the problem, in my opinion, right? So I just would love for you to talk pretty plainly about that in the mouthwash world and the toothpaste world that exists now, what you see and what you are as a company as Silver Biotics, and as you're putting these products together, what you really try to stay away from.
Yeah, we do. We try and stay away from any of those products. They're toxic.
Yeah.
The parabens, the cyclohexidine that's in there. I mean, it's made to kill pathogens, but it does so in such a toxic method that, there's what they call LD50 studies on this, which is a lethal dose of 50% of the subjects die. And because there's studies on it.
Yeah.
So they know that they can't put too much in there, but just enough to not reach those toxic levels. But they're still toxins. No matter how much you put in there, it's still toxic.
Yeah.
And so they're put in there for a specific reason, but I just can't see why you would put those things, into your body. Our products have what we call clean. They're natural, baking soda that comes from, very pure deposits,
Mm-hmm.
Xanthan gum that comes from, plants. And all these products are not made to be toxic. And the nice thing about the silver product, number one, it kills microbes. And number two, it acts as a preservative for the product.
Yeah.
So it has, you don't have to worry about that. It doesn't grow bacteria after a while without the use of the parabens and the sorbates and the benzoates. And you can go on and on and on with what people have put into, and a regulatory body is allowed to put into products to quote unquote preserve them and keep them safe.
Yeah. And even I saw lists of anti-abrasion materials and essences and flavoring. And I was like, okay, let me look up these flavorings. And then it's just made from, low dose toxin. Mm-hmm. And it's so amazing to me. And I just wonder if is it filler? Is it cheaper? Is it it's not like they're trying to support the farmers who make those things per se, or is there, we don't have to get into conspiracy theories, but why would brands be utilizing that? Sometimes I can say, okay, a food brand is going to put corn fiber in, which of course I'm not a fan of, or seed oil because it's cheaper. Is that the same thing here we're talking about? That's why it ends up in these tubes and these bottles?
Absolutely. You can buy potassium sorbate for pennies a pound.
Mm.
And in the same way with the parabens, they're very cheap, they're easy to make, but they come from chemical processes that are toxic.
Yeah.
They are.
Yeah.
And so but they are inexpensive. And so the companies use them to preserve their products.
Yeah. Yeah. It's sort of, it's like the mouthwash thing. I think you already know this, but just for our listeners who are listening, they've heard me talk a bit about, nitric oxide when I talk about breath work and nitric oxide production natural in the body. And sometimes I've taken NO supplements, which is purported as hey, you hit 40, maybe it's time to get some of those in your system. And men always perk up and listen when I talk about nitric oxide and erectile dysfunction. Then all of a sudden men are wait a minute, what's happening? What do I need? What do we need to fix all the issues? But, the common conversation among biohackers, and I don't know if everyone who's listening even knows this, is that using some of these mouthwashes with the chemical that's in them they are breaking down from the mouth through the esophagus all the way into the system. They are making things worse, right? We reduce the amount of nitric oxide in our system over 40. We need nitric oxide to be vasodilated and all of these things. And then you're putting mouthwash in your mouth and gargling it around. And it's like the number one thing I'm always on my mom's case about, because she loves a good mouthwash. And I'm like, Mom, get all the products, do all the things. I have her on, she's like, face serum, hand cream. We're working on the toothpaste. We're working on the mouth rinse. But it blows my mind.
It blows my mind too. And I used to use Colgate
well,
or
we didn't
whatever
know what we
toothpaste.
knew. We don't know what we don't know.
Sure. I used it for years and years and years. And then when I formulated this toothpaste, I exclusively use this now and nothing else.
Yeah.
And I thought, I wonder what it's like to go back. It's terrible. The taste, the mouthfeel, it's like,
yeah.
Oh my, I was doing this for all of my life and I would never go back.
Yeah. I'm the same. People are always like, why are you so passionate about that toothpaste? Until I start to really talk about what's in the other stuff. And then they're like, okay, I see what you're, I'm like luring them in. I'm like, want some candy? Let's go, try this toothpaste. And then they sort of get the picture. And this is why I really wanted to sit down with you to talk about the technology, because it's a whole body healthy technology and something that really is so natural. And it makes me feel like there's just ease with my bathroom routine. There's ease with how I travel now. I was doing a van life for 6 months. And so, I'm like stocked up on all the things. And the other thing is like in van life for me, this is like an odd usage occasion, surely. But, I'm like out, like I'm like brushing my teeth in a river some days, I'm just like doing the thing. And so anything I'm using like on my skin, on my face, I was cognizant of like, am I spitting into a river? What am I, you know what I mean? What am I sharing with the planet? And so not only do we want to, of course, keep our families and our bodies and everything healthy, but like, what are we giving back? What are we putting back out there? And if I'm in an environment that's nature, these things I wanted to make sure they're, drop a bottle of my nasal spray or something happens, it's not going to be like bad for our planet, which was really a big tenet of what I was out there doing, was trying to get people to like breathe the fresh air and use the clean products and all of that.
Yeah.
If we go back to sort of the world of wound gel and creams and things like that, I'm always recommending that people put these things in their cabinet beforehand, because you don't know what is coming. You don't know where the scrapes and the cuts and the bruises. But I grew up on like triple antibiotic and bacitracin. And I mean like, I had and I was in my late 20s. I had this weird, like later in life adult acne, let's call it that. And I tried all the things, and I went through tubes and tubes and tubes of, I would buy the cream triple antibiotic instead of the ointment, because if you put the ointment on your face, you were shiny. And I was using it for quite some time. And I feel like in some cases it made areas worse versus better. So could you, speak a little bit to that? I don't know if bacitracin was a big thing when you were a kid, but my mom was always like, get the bacitracin. And I look back now and wonder, did it not really help that cut breathe? And what was it kind of doing to me? And why, what might be the differences between some of the gels and creams you have versus those typical products we see on the shelf?
Well, one thing interesting about silver, and we could have this, little discussion too, is that microbes are smart. And they will find a way to get around antibiotics. And we call that antibiotic resistance. And there's some nasty ones out there. MRSA and VRE and on and on and on that were typical bacteria, but now they've become resistant to those antibiotics, to most antibiotics. There is no known antibiotic resistance to silver. And so, again, could you have long-term use of bacitracin and triple biotic ointment? Could you have been creating antibiotic resistant strains? Because, the old story, life will find a way.
Yeah.
And it will.
Yeah.
So yeah, after a period of time on antibiotics, you could be creating these strains of bacteria or microbes that are resistant.
When you talk about this, it makes me want to ask, like, bodes the question, are they utilizing silver in hospitals? Is there widespread use in some, in various different patients or diagnoses where they're really using it to some scale that feels like a positive effect for the body's healing?
Yeah, the good news is that we have been able to put our prescription products
Mm-hmm.
in the formularies in some hospitals.
Oh, amazing.
And they're using them in burn units.
Yeah, that's amazing. Because that's like that Hawaii thing was made me a believer, hands down. Yeah. That's really nice to hear because sometimes we don't know which way Western medicine is going.
So they are, I mean, medicine is moving to different things now where they're finding out that antibiotics isn't the key anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And also like there's the power of belief, I think is really, that's something we all work to overcome. Like we have big beliefs that we hold on to. And also, you know, I do have respect, of course, in some ways for the medical community, not just being like, oh, I read it in a blog, let's change all the protocols, you know, like they want to have some like research that shows efficacy. And I would imagine with the example of like the gels and the creams that you're making, and if you're doing a prescription formula, that then the proof is in the pudding. They're seeing shifts in the tissue, and then it must be helping that, you know, like move through like wildfire, move more and more into other institutions, into other, whether it's burn units or places in the hospital that they can utilize that. It's just slow to change, right? We want it to move faster.
Yeah, and there's always big pharma out there that's trying to push, you know, what they have as well. But we've created some.
Really?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Big pharma.
Well, and we've kind of kept a low key on our products because we don't want big pharma to become an enemy of us.
Yeah.
Where, you know, they could be.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you can keep it low key, but I keep shouting from the rooftops because it's really nice to have something you can trust. You know, this is like, the brands that I like call in and call upon and say, let's sit down and talk about this ingredient profile is really about giving education, the same reason that you exist in the world. And thankfully you didn't just retire and go off and, you know, jump out of airplanes, although maybe you still do that too. I don't know, or if you're doing that, but you went out and you're like, okay, let me get with this brand that I can use my brain power to bolster that. Because these are pieces that I think every household needs to begin to understand. You know, I won't go off on this tangent, but lately I've been having a big challenge with like the scents that we use in the world.
Oh, yeah.
My apartment building, like they just picked a new flavor for the lobby, or I don't even know what else to say. And it's not that it's not, it's like, I don't want to say scandalous, but it is sort of, I like wrote them to just say, hey, what's this scent? You know, it feels like it could have some toxicity. And like a lot of, when we're talking about using Glade and things like that, not to knock specific brands, but various different popularized products that are air fresheners, they're like actually stunting our scent receptors and highly toxic in many ways. And so I said, hey, can you just tell me what the ingredients are? I just want to know.
Yeah.
No big deal. Here's the company. I saw a phone number. I could call them, but do you know? And they're like, oh, here we have this piece of paper that lists all the ingredients. And I open the email with the attachment, and the attachment just says no ingredients. It just says all of our things have been reviewed through this board and this board and this board as generally recognized as safe or something.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then I was like, that's not an answer. And you know, it's not, you got to just pick which mountains you're going to battle on, right? You got to decide, but I think it's very, we need to get more cognizant. Just for people who are listening, pick up the mouthwash bottle, look at the plug-in you have in your house and look at the ingredients on the back and just Google a couple of them. Like we have all of this technology we can use now.
And the databases.
Tell me more about that, where you can go look things up.
There's a couple of them. There's
like an ERW is one, right?
And EWG. There's a lot of databases out there where you can look at toxicity levels and things like that as well. But here's an example, chemistry.
Mm-hmm.
I love chemistry. You take a substance called isopenyl alcohol, which is kind of used in some lubrication machines and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And acetic acid, which is, well, it's not really used for a whole lot. I mean, acetic acid, that's what makes vinegar sour, right? But if you take pure acetic acid and you take this alcohol and you mix it with concentrated sulfuric acid, which is the battery acid in your car. Okay, mix those three together and something magical happens. You get banana. Isopenyl acetate is the ester that makes banana smell and taste like banana. Now, the cool thing is that banana trees do this in a very natural way. However, if you put banana scent in something, it could be made from these toxic chemicals.
Totally. Wow.
You know, and that's to me, that's the miracle of life too, is that a banana tree can take carbon dioxide and water and some minerals, and they can put things together naturally that is not toxic.
Right.
But when it says, you know, a synthetic, that's the, you know, the things you have to worry about.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so wild. And that runs all the way back to like, I had a little stint in the alcohol industry. It's probably longer than little, but I was like running many brands and talking about how they're doing even just flavoring in cocktails and just looking at the things that are in there. And really, I was really trying to attempt to work for companies that were doing things where they were like soaking natural fruits and then distilling and whatnot versus then the American palate is like, no, we want more banana in our vodka or whatever. Yeah. And so, yeah, it's just, it goes on and on and on. And it's also so interesting to peel apart. And I think we all don't always have all the time, which is why people like you exist in the world. So we can understand more clearly and why we're having this conversation for just leveling up our game about looking at all of the products we have in our homes and saying, how can I do this cleaner? It's not even about better, right? It's just like cleaner without shame of like, oh my goodness, I didn't know. Well, great. Now you do. Let's move on to the next thing.
Exactly.
We've talked about a bit about ingesting these things. Mm-hmm. And now I just want to talk about this amazing face serum that you have. And topically, I understand too about how the wound gels and things work, but skin tissue being a little bit different on the face and the impetus to sort of make a face serum. And is there anything different in that is, I put it on first. Is that correct?
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah. And it absorbs really well into the skin. Mm-hmm. And it's such an easy recipe. I look at, you know, Estee Lauder and L'Oreal and all the TV that's out there with these commercials with their hyaluronic acids. And I'm going, oh my, it's simple and it's not expensive. And, you know, they put additives in there to, you know, keep it longevity and everything else. But our facial serum is just 2 types of hyaluronic acid and our Silver Sol technology. Mm-hmm. It's just simple, it's easy, and it does what it's supposed to do without all of the extra additives in there as well. And that's what I love about our products, and that's why I make them so they are very simple, very clean, and hardly any ingredients whatsoever.
You must be fun to watch just like TV ads that come on for things like that, where you're like, what are they saying? That's not even a real thing. That's like marketing or something.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. And it's just I feel like it's a reasonable price point on the face serum compared to all these other brands, which can be quite costly. And it's the number one thing that I will gift to women, you know, in my friend circle or when there's like a birthday or something or whatever, because I think it's a really nice gift. It isn't so crazy costly and it's so, it's like efficient and effective. And travel size so that I don't have to worry about it in my little TSA bag, which is a nice thing to tout. I think we touched on this a little, but I wanted to ask you this question. So let me just ask it. And if you feel like we've covered it, great. But I want to get a sense of what you think, how do we weave things like this Silver Sol product and these technologies in? Like, how is that going to affect the future of our healthcare? So I know we talked about it in hospitals, but it's like, at what pace, and are there more things that we can be spending time engineering, discovering, creating that can take healthcare? Because in my opinion, I'm not quite sure if we're not on the slippery slope or not. And I'm just wondering if you feel like layering things like this can we make it all work for good?
I think we are on a slippery slope.
Yeah.
I mean, again, if you look at nighttime TV, what is it? Every 4th commercial is a new drug.
Oh, yeah.
And there's so many people. I didn't know that this many people had psoriasis, but apparently they do, because there are like 15 new medications out there for psoriasis and eczema and all these skin issues. So I think, yeah, we are on a slippery slope. I wouldn't be taking anything into my body that if I couldn't find a natural method to not necessarily cure it, but to help with the issues that it has, the symptoms. I would be looking for that instead of going to big pharma for the newest, greatest drug that's out there.
Yeah.
I mean, some of the drugs they come up with are good, no question about it. some of the anti-cancer drugs and things like that I've done some studies on that will increase, your life if you do have like a stage 3, stage 4 cancer. Sure, great. But some of the things that are not necessary that can be handled with natural products. Humans have been around a long time. And back in the day, if you can find some really cool old books that my grandparents had for different types of medicines that they've created out of different plants and other natural products that worked. And how much of that have we forgotten that doesn't exist anymore? But it still was out there, and it still could be out there if you do the right research and how to find things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is where you get a little bit of your love for like the formulation, science, biochem. You have like a history of family that's done some, you had witch doctors and stuff and your wizards in your family from medicine men and women.
Pioneers.
Yeah.
Just pioneers. And my great-grandparents came over from northern Italy, and they had, different things that they used, arnica and chamomile and a lot of different, botanics that still work.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, let's talk about can you mention the one that's coming out soon that has arnica in it? Because I'm a super fan of can you talk about that?
Yes, our new muscle, I don't know what to call it, muscle cream, muscle rub, but anyway, it has all pure ingredients. And unfortunately, this is not my formulation. This is Kelly's formulation.
Okay,
and she is our marketing person, and she says, "Hey, can we make something that has this and this and this?" And I says, "Well, yeah, I could do that."
Amazing.
Because that's kind of what I do.
I didn't know that. I love that.
And so we put it together, and Kelly says, "I want, this percentage of arnica in it and botsuella in it." And so I says, "I think I can make that work."
Yeah.
And it works. So that's my magic, is to make it work. And Kelly's magic is to say, "Hey,
get on this. We need it. We're all working out. We're all sore over here. Can you help us out? Can you help us with recovery?"
Yeah. And so with the new toothpaste that's coming out, I think you'll really love that. I love it more than the other toothpaste, which I love so much anyway.
Yeah, yeah.
And
it's a new
rinse.
Formulation of that similar style, just with some different formula components to the formula.
Yeah. We call them value-added
components.
Value-added components.
Yeah, because I have the gel and I have the paste, and I sort of alternate on the mornings what I'm feeling if I want a little bit more of like a minty kick.
Yeah.
I travel a lot with the paste. It's good.
But going back to the recover, we're going to call it recover. Recover. And it's not necessarily for recovery. You can use it, post or pre-workout or however you want to use it. It has some amazing components in it that, again, are definitely value added that you don't see in other muscle creams. It has some basics in it that you would say, okay, yeah, this is a muscle cream. But some of the other things in it are definitely value added. And so the list it's got a few ingredients in there that you don't see normally that will do amazing things.
Yeah, that's cool. You said boswellia is in there? Yeah, that's so great. I'm going to turn a little of the conversation into your adventure mindset, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Because you did say in the beginning, and I've heard you speak a bit before, that you're quite adventurous and thrill-seeking. And so I want to just talk a bit about, you're working in this industry and you're having a lot of success with formulation and thinking about, the way that you put things out there that are like clean and pure and natural and really good for the body with no toxic components. And so it just, it sort of leads me to ask the question about the way that you are thrill seeking and taking risks, because you don't do that taking risks in your product. So you must be like the guy who jumps out of the planes and, tell me about the things that you're doing from an adventure-seeking mindset, because you're very vibrant gentleman and highly intellectual. And also, when I started hearing little tricklings of this on other shows with you, I thought, oh, I had no idea about this. Tell me the fun things that you like to go out and do to keep yourself vibrant and, in the love of life.
We just got back from southern Utah, and so we did some canyoneering down there, and little bit of rock crawling and, climbing on things. And of course, I have toys. We like to go out in the mountains and ride and then hike alpine. And I have a weird hobby that's not very common.
What's that?
I'm an international bobsled and skeleton official.
Wow. Tell me about that. So you're like reffing it?
Yes, I officiate World Cups and Asian Cups and bobsled and skeleton races. They fly me all over the world, and it's just fun. And we went to Korea a couple of times this last year, and Canada, Europe, and I still slide. Which
I was going to
means,
say you must have done it for a number of years to really understand the nuance to be able to officiate.
Yeah, and so I still slide skeleton.
Whoa!
Up here in Park City or wherever else I can. So it's like jumping on a cookie sheet down an icy track, and you're Superman.
There's a crazy, look, I'm going to butcher this, okay? So there's a crazy jump or something, or there's a crazy slide here. When I was working with Red Bull for a while, back when we talked about it as a functional beverage, because although we know there's some interesting ingredients in there, and of course there was sugar, it was one of the first functional beverages. And so I always say, like, let's give Red Bull a little bit credit for opening the door so that we could then say, okay, Coca-Cola really no. And then, okay, maybe not so much Red Bull anymore, but it was like, oh, what's this, right? It created curiosity. But the point of it is to say that they brought me on a company field trip, and I feel like, I don't know if they put us with a helmet on a big long slide, like feet first, I think.
Oh, yeah, luge.
And it was here. It was like a luge.
Yeah, it was luge. Yeah.
I feel like you're in the right place. Maybe that's why you're here, because it has so many activities in this beautiful state of yours.
Oh, and that's what I love about Utah. You can be hiking, 10, 12,000 feet alpine with mountain goats all around you. And in 3 hours, you can be down in southern Utah in the slot canyons and, going around there. And so, yeah, I love to be outside doing stuff.
Yeah, that's amazing. Oh, I love it. I always love to hear things about people's personal world in that way, because it's just, it resonates in the sense of all of us working on our longevity and wellness, and the sense of play that we get to bring to the things that we do, because it's so healing to have. And some of the things you're doing, of course, are actually like, it's fitness, but it's also a sense of play. So that's such a nice balance. And I really typically like to close on the question to ask you about the wellness landscape in general. If you were like yourself now and you could pick up the phone and call your like 15-year-old self and say, it's the one thing I'm going to tell myself that is, a way to bolster wellness or well-being, or could be mindset. Like, what's the thing that you would call yourself up and say across the airwaves?
To me, and this is why I do what I do, the greatest gift I can give, my family and the public out there is a gift of health and wellness.
Mm-hmm.
And I would probably tell myself, whatever you do, stay active. Just stay active, as often as you can, and make it play. Go play outside, enjoy the fresh air, enjoy nature. I mean, it's such a beautiful planet that we have. And that's probably what I would do.
Amazing. Well, I want to thank you so much for being here today, for putting these products with Kelly and your whole team out into the world. Silver Biotics has been, I'm like almost 2.5 years into using the product line. And it just makes me always feel there's a component of life that's like, where can I make sure I'm safe in my house and I'm safe with what I'm putting on my skin? And I'm not doing too bad. So
you look wonderful.
I really appreciate you being here and sharing the story and sharing some science at a level that is understandable and fun with the audience, so that we can all go out and treat our bodies well with these whole body healthy ingredients.
Well, thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure. And again, I'm always out there touting just, health and wellness and to be healthy and to have products that you can be healthy with. And so that's what I do.
Amazing. All right. Well, people they're going to come and try and find you and stalk you all over Instagram or wherever they can find you. And then also they're going to come to Silver Biotics and know that there's power behind the brand. So,
well, thank you.
Appreciate your time.
Thank you.